This is quite the long litany of announcements here, so just a moment. Bear with me. I think it's longer than my homily. Beginning in Advent, we'll have a new missalette in our pews called the Source and Summit Missalette. It's similar to our current one, but it includes the Mass readings, and it also has the propers of the Mass, the entrance, antiphon, the offertory, and the communion. So when we want to use them, you can follow along. And it also has the collect, that's the opening prayer. It has a bunch more stuff in there, and also some beautiful devotional prayers. So that'll be for the use at all the Masses. That'll be coming up next weekend, which is the first Sunday of Advent. Please join us on this Wednesday, November 26th, for our parish blood drive from 10 a.m. to 2 in the parish hall. You get a T-shirt, the Chief's T-shirt, if you donate blood. Come celebrate the patron of our parish, St. Andrew, on Monday, December 1st. It's transferred this year because of the first Sunday of Advent. We'll begin with the 6 p.m. Mass in his honor. This will be the new Mass, the current one we have in Latin. That's the one that's approved by the Church. Afterwards, there'll be a light dinner, refreshments, and family activities to follow. All families are welcome to attend. If you're going to eat with us, it would be nice if you RSVP'd to Lucinda so we know how much food to make. The social outreach group will have their Christmas angel trees out the weekend of Thanksgiving, next weekend, for the families that we have adopted or that we're going to adopt. You may take an ornament, select the present, wrap it up, and deliver it back to the church before December 14th. We can't deliver late presents. Our middle schoolers of St. Andrew School have adopted a neighborhood nursing home this year for Christmas season, and they'll be having a bake sale after Mass. I went in my house and got a pile of ones, so I hope you have a bunch of ones too. You go back there, it's in the cafeteria. Please support them by giving them by purchasing some baked goods. The Altar and Rosary Society will be accepting names for memorial poinsettias this year for Christmas, November 23rd through the 16th of December. You could look at more information in the bulletin. Of course, the poinsettias stay up on the altar or the sanctuary for the entirety of the Christmas season. The price is $20 per plant. The Gladstone Fire Department has reminded us to please not use the fire lanes and the diagonal striped areas of the parking lot for parking. This is especially important in front of the school. If there was an accident here or something else, that means that they couldn't get in the lane to access the building. So that's for EMS and fire trucks. And lastly, a little announcement, which some of you may have heard of. Our associate pastor, our Father Haran, has been appointed chaplain of St. Pius X High School. This is effective January 12th of this coming year. He'll remain here in residence at St. Andrew. He'll continue to live here and be our assistant here. But he'll now only be here 2 days a week, and he'll be at the high school 2 days a week. So we might be feeling the squeeze a little bit. It's wonderful how many parishioners we have. I think we received 200 more in the last year. I think we have 5,000 people registered at our church, and almost like 1,800 families, but that means that some days a week you got to deal with me, and I'm the only one, because he'll be over there at the high school with all of our, which is great, because we'll be able to build that relationship between our high school and this parish. So anyway, we congratulate him on that assignment, and again, he'll continue to live at our parish and assist us on the weekends and 2 days during the week. After Mass today, there's a piece of paper in your pew. There's two different things, but there's a piece of paper. Please leave it there for the next Mass. But it's the custom on the Feast of Christ the King to reconsecrate the world and ourselves to the Sacred Heart of Jesus. When the feast day was instituted in 1925, 100 years ago, this is what the Holy Father of that time asked us to do in all of our churches. So immediately after Mass, we'll kneel down and say the prayer. Of course, we consecrated our church family to the Sacred Heart last year at this time. So this is kind of a renewal of that. And then just please leave it there for the next Masses. When we read the Gospel of Luke today, the sign above the cross says, "This is the democratically elected president of the Jews." It didn't say that, did it? No, it said, "This is the King of the Jews." Now, kingship for Americans is hard, because I think we're hardwired from adolescence to reject that. I mean, after all of our American history and everything else, we constantly hear king equals bad stuff. We have to elect our leader. And most of us are comfortable with saying that Jesus is a spiritual king. We may not have a problem with that, but is he a political king? Is he king of every aspect of our lives? After all, Pontius Pilate asks him that, are you a king? And he says, my kingdom is not of this world. So what is the polis then? It's the everyday social and economic commerce between peoples in a given geographic area. It's like everyday life, right? So are we saying somehow that Jesus as king should have nothing to do with that? That somehow his reign does not extend to our everyday lives as individuals, as families, as neighborhoods and communities, and as a nation? Perhaps in our land it would seem so. We have been hardwired to believe that religious practice is only really the right to worship, like the right to be here in the building right now for 45 minutes on a Saturday afternoon or on a Sunday, or that somehow religious practice only extends to the limited time that we spend in a given place at a given time. But if that were true, then the kingship of Christ would not extend very far. It would extend to 45 minutes or 1 hour a week, or sometimes 0 hours a week for some people of our lives. So what is the Christian ideal on the solemnity of Christ the King? The Feast of Christ the King was instituted at a time in history 100 years ago this year by Pope Pius XI, shortly after the First World War and the reorganization of Europe, and pretty much the loss of Christendom as a whole, the collapse of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, the last Christian emperor. So one could say that with what is called the Great War, the last political system based on Christian morals finally fell. Avarice, greed, and lust for power killed it. And while I do not wish to wax on a Saturday afternoon about the historical context of this feast, I do think it's worth mentioning because with the end of this time period, the last vestiges of Christendom finally disappear. They pass into an age of soft secularism, which merely now tolerates Christianity as one among many beliefs that are equal. So Pope Pius XI felt obliged, even 100 years ago, to remind the Church and to remind all Christians that the reign of Christ the King extends to every land, every nation, every family, and every individual. It extends to every man-made law, custom, and moral principle, lest human beings claim authority even over the laws of nature. Does that sound familiar, like where we are today? So if Christ is the fulfillment of the law, if he is the fulfillment of all of the prophets, if he is the bread come down from heaven, I'm talking about like the Ark of the Covenant, if he is the fulfillment of the priesthood, he is the high priest among us, who offers himself as both priest and victim in his very person, then indeed his judgments as our Lord and God can never be unjust. Think about that for a second. Sometimes we say, like in other words, when we talk about heaven and hell, well, how could a loving God do that? Because all of his judgments are just. Ours are not sometimes. We make bad judgments. Sometimes we're unfair with others or unjust. But God's judgments, they can't be anything else but true, but loving, but perfect. So we're kind of putting ourselves on God when we start thinking like that, like, oh, mean and unjust God, he can't be. He could be nothing but good. Yet we're somehow hardwired into believing that he's another petty and unjust despot. When we overthrow Christ the King in our family life and our society, what are we to do? We're necessarily exchanging justice, which only comes from God, for personal autonomy. Because we're fallen human beings, that doesn't actually end up very well. When we shove Christ off the throne in any part of our political lives, polis meaning our day-to-day lives, the way a society works, it always ends in selfishness, loneliness, brokenness. And what autonomy or self-rule, ruling over oneself and my way and what I can do and all about me, what that very thing claims to militate against, we actually end up obtaining a loose federation of individuals with no rule of law, or at the very least, man-made arbitrary laws based on the majority of those people in power that can change at any time, in any place, really without a reason, just on who has the majority vote, rather than on a static moral truth based on the natural and divine law. When I say natural law Natural law is man's rational participation in the mind of God. That's what I mean by that. When I say divine law, I mean the things that he has told us about himself that we wouldn't otherwise know. So the reign of hell is based precisely on this principle of I will not serve. I will do things my way in the way in which I want because I can. I'm my own master. I do what I want when I want for me. Truth, law, and flourishing is determined by power and that mode of thought, and violence, and who could yell the loudest and overtake somebody else. It was unjust that the Lord was crucified in the story that we hear today. That's not justice right there. Yet, he was crucified in the context of exactly what I'm talking about. The person with the rule of law lacked courage to do the right thing. That was the Roman governor, Pontius Pilate. And he was also crucified by a majority vote, a very unruly and angry crowd of his peers. Where does that leave us in our pluralistic society today, where cultural Christian values have now been eroded? Or at least, as I'm seeing lately on all sorts of news things, like reinterpreted in kind of an evangelical gospel of prosperity way, which is Christianity based on enthusiasm or material wealth, without any sort of ascetic practice or sacrifice. Where does that leave us as Catholics? And I might say believing Catholics and not cultural ones, who are now clearly in the minority of all of this. What are we supposed to do? No matter what, it's our duty to advance the reign of Christ the King in the here and now in any way in which we can. Not only in our own individual lives, but in our family lives, and our social groups, and our friend groups, and our government. Authentic law, which is by definition a dictate of reason, in accordance with the natural and divine law, legislated for the common good by someone with authority and then made known. I just gave you the definition of what a law is. A true law is always in the mind of God, who is truth himself. Otherwise, it's not a law that you have to follow. God cannot be unreasonable or just simply not good. He is always good. So if a law is made which is not just, it's actually not a law, technically. In other words, law is not merely a dictate of whoever's in power. But that's the mindset in which we have all been raised. It's a hard thing to think about. And that's what's so challenging about, in the church's calendar, the feast day of Christ the King. Because we're reminded again that the truth of the matter is not determined by a majority vote or a cultural time period, lest we actually have no end or trajectory of where we're going other than ourselves and our own self-determination for the moment. Unjust laws do not correspond to something. Unjust laws do not correspond to the good or what is moral. They kind of correspond to whatever we want in that moment, right? But Christ's kingship spans space and time. His rule is always just, never unjust. And his reign that we're supposed to advance as Christians is ordered toward every human being's flourishing, even unto ultimate union with the Trinity, because that's our end. So it's not like that episode of The Simpsons, right, from years ago. There's not like a Protestant section of heaven, a Catholic section of heaven, a Muslim section of heaven, a Jewish section of heaven. There's just one heaven. There's just one view of God. There's one union with God. And what does the Lord say in the sacred scripture? He says that I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. That's what he says. So here's this incarnate God. The Word is made flesh, walks among us, and he finds a visible body on earth, a way that he could continue to be with us until the end of the age. He does not find a conglomerate or a federation of self-ruling autonomous groups that determine their own worth and their own path, but he finds a church, and he finds one church, not many self-ruling bodies of individuals. I feel like this doctrine has been completely eroded today, or we're even embarrassed to say that anymore. One true church, shh, don't say that. People get upset. But did he or did he not? His reign is one that we're all subject to, no matter what walk of life we're from. It's the measure by which we're all judged, the measure of what is true and good and beautiful, not only for us individually, but collectively as a society and as a family of human beings. You know, truth cannot be put in an autonomous box, or one in which we only come to look at 45 minutes a week, or maybe at all. In every aspect of every life, all things are subject to the Lord, who is the King of glory. And when we cooperate with that, when we advance his reign, we proclaim him King of our lives. We do not usurp God from his throne, but are then transformed by the power of the word, by the power of the gospel. Above the cross hung the placard, "This is the King of the Jews." Indeed, he is the King of the universe. And our King's throne is the cross, which is the sign of God's love for all of humanity. So today, on this last Sunday before Advent, we stand before his throne, where now he offers us his own body and blood as the chief servant. That's what it means to be the king. Is an oblation of reconciliation for humanity, and we're privileged to sit in his holy court. And as we, as his followers, who believe he is the way, the truth, and the life, that no one comes to the Father except through him, as we advance his rule, his laws, his reign of love in the world, his reign of truth in the world and goodness, in all aspects of our lives, public and private, we get that foretaste in this moment, in a few moments, of the true kingdom that he promises us, that he will be with us until the end of the age.